Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Chongus coming at you with some more Risk of Rain 2 content. I'm gonna be making a tier list today, but not just any tier list. This is a fun tier list, and this is mostly based on my experience grinding up through Eclipse 8. So keep that in mind when listening to this video. Now, I'm gonna go through the tiers real quick. We have Peak. This is the absolute most fun you can have in this game. We've got Always Fun, characters that I usually have a good time on. And then sometimes for characters that I'll play occasionally, and they're okay, but nothing special. And then the tier, for characters that I really would never play unless it was just to get the marks for them on Eclipse. And then the fuck you tier, the characters that I absolutely dread playing on Eclipse because they're so fucking boring. Alright, let's get right into it. Starting with Acrid. And he's going straight into the fuck you tier. This character does no damage. He's so boring because all you do is poison them and run away. You can't play actively with melee or you just get blown up. He's so fucking boring, and that's why he's going in the fuck you tier, okay? Straight away. Now let's get into Artificer, okay? This is peak Risk of Rain 2, the best survivor in the game in terms of fun, in my opinion. I'm an Artificer main, and I only use the flamethrower. Now, a lot of people have a lot of fun with the alternate special where you can fly in the air and shoot stuff. I think that's boring. Flamethrower is badass. You can just cook alive tons of enemies, does a ton of damage, procs all your stuff, and you have to actually be skillful with your movement to use it well. And I know a lot of people hate the flamethrower, but I have to say that it is completely based, and it is the best ability for this character. Okay, let's do Bandit. Boom, right up there in peak gameplay. Really engaging combo mechanics. He's got like a complex style where he goes in and out of stealth, sneaks up behind enemies, executes like a wisp to reset the right click and stack up a bunch of hemorrhage and just absolutely shred bosses early on. And he gets super fun if you get like crowbars, bands, or any like proc items. His left click is really good at doing that too, especially the shotgun. So yeah, Bandit, he's going up right into peak Risk of Rain 2 gameplay. Moving on to Captain. I'm gonna drop him in fun, sometimes fun. If you play Captain every once in a while, you're not gonna hate it. He's pretty neat, especially with like the hacking beacon and stuff, and he's got a really fun meme build with Diablo Strike. I will say that either shift that you take, they're pretty hard to use and get consistently on enemies, especially flying ones. He's just kind of like annoying to play because you have to spam left click the whole game, and I just get tired of spamming left click. I know it's really good, but it's so good that it's boring. And similarly, in the same vein, we're going to put Commando in the same tier. He's fun on occasion, he has a really nice movement skill in the slide, and his left click is just good. It's a solid left click, it's better range than Captain, and it is a beast at proccing items, but man is it boring. You literally just stare at stuff and left click the entire game. You can only play Commando like once out of every 5 runs, and as long as you don't play him too often, you know, it's pretty fun. I know a lot of people swear by Commando, he's the only character that they play. Those people are vanilla, okay? Extremely vanilla, and they're also boring. Alright, let's move on. We've got Engineer, okay? Engineer going straight into the tier. I think most people that main Engineer probably don't have a lot of gaming experience, I would say. He's really like hands-off, similar to Acrid. You kind of place your turrets down and run around. I know there's some stuff you can do with like the harpoons or whatever, and his left click I just find completely unsatisfying to use, and his right click is also really clunky. The turret cooldown is just too long to use them dynamically as well, and you're kind of too chained to the power of your turrets that the rest of your power budget is really nerfed, and he has no built-in mobility, so he's pretty boring in my opinion. But I don't absolutely hate him, I just like never really look forward to playing him, and I wouldn't play him if I didn't have to get the gold Eclipse 8. Alright, Heretic. Going again in the tier. I don't particularly like any of Heretic's abilities. The Needler is kind of cool, but it's not satisfying when it hits, and the explosion is so delayed and doesn't have like enough of an effect to really like feel like you're using the Needler from Halo or something. It doesn't really execute unless you pair it with the R. The R, the special, is one ability that I think is pretty cool on Heretic. It's like the only one that I would usually take on somebody like Commando because it's pretty useful for proccing bands. But the right click is really hard to use and also just completely underwhelming. And the shift takes you out of combat for an awkwardly long amount of time, and it feels like it really messes with the pace of the character. So that's why he, I don't know what the fuck it is. That's why it's going into the F tier. Okay, Huntress. First one in the always fun tier. Huntress is a good time. She's not anything special in terms of damage, especially early on, but her blink, man, her triple blink is just so satisfying. It's like playing Dark Souls or something. Every time you see the enemy wind up an attack, you just blink, 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 and time it perfectly to just never take any damage. She's super fun with some shaped glass or something, and I think she's really satisfying to pull off, especially like early on into the game when you're dodging a lot of enemies and you don't have that much damage. Alright, Loader. Everybody knows Loader is the best character in the game, so that's why I have to put Loader in peak. Not only is Loader extremely fucking good and negates several parts of Eclipse just by nature of her base stats and abilities, she also does a shitload of damage. She can one-shot Mithrix in like half of the games that you play her, even on Eclipse. And her mobility, oh my god, you can just fly across the map in like 2 seconds with one backup mag. No other movement speed items. All you need to build on her is damage, and even that is pretty optional. She's just insane. Very fun to Spider-Man around the map, but I get tired of winning all the time, especially so easily. There's not really any challenge to it. That's why it's going in the bottom of peak tier. Mercenary. Ooh, this is a hard one. Mercenary is going straight into peak though, but I can't decide whether he's more fun than Bandit or Artificer or not. I'm gonna drop him right in the middle. I'm gonna say Mercenary's the second most engaging character in the game. Again, similar to Bandit and Artificer, weaving in those abilities, very skillfully deciding when you want to dive in and out of combat and resetting your cooldowns with your passive to rotate in more powerful abilities and optimally DPS every different kind of enemy based on what you're fighting. Really interesting character. And similarly to Huntress, he has a brief window of invulnerability that you can use like a Huntress blink to perfectly time a dodge on something like a jellyfish explosion, like Dark Souls rolling or whatever. Super satisfying that you have that skill expression during combat that lets you really stick on enemies and just grind them up. Super fun character. Alright, moving on to Multi. Multi is hard for me because I think he can be more or less fun than Commando depending on how you build him and what items you get. So I'm going to drop him at the top of F tier because the nail gun is so short range and kind of boring. It's like halfway between Commando and Captain, and it really doesn't have much of an identity other than just proccing stuff really fast. But you could get that on other characters too and not have to deal with Multi's awkward right click, his awkward shift. The shift does a lot of damage, especially if you have some movement speed items because it has the heavy modifier like Loader's Punch, but you're not really going to center a build around it because it's kind of dangerous to just bonk into an enemy and then have no mobility left to escape. At least with Loader, you continue through the enemy if you take the main punch, and then you can run away afterwards. But Multi, you're left like a sitting duck, and he's pretty slow outside of the shift. Retool is kind of nice, I guess, if you're doing an equipment build, but it's not really anything special. I think it's kind of like most of the time, just like the tier name. And then obviously his right click is like impossible to hit on flying enemies and do any meaningful damage, and it really just serves to like interrupt a golem blazer or something because it barely does any damage. So he's going into A tier. The one thing that's putting him at the top of A tier is double saw. The power stance saw thing is so much fun when you just get to a boss and you work around how you have like no mobility to get up to flying enemies. You've got to get right up in the action and be really careful about when you go for that all-out DPS. But man, when you get an opportunity to just shred an enemy, I don't think there's much things more satisfying than that below the peak tier. You know, the double saw Multi is always a good time. Super fun, but very hard. And I beat high levels of Eclipse with it already, and I'm still going to Eclipse 8. It's my preferred way to play just because it's so memey, but it is fun. Alright, Railgunner. Railgunner is going to go at the top of the always fun tier. I always have a good time playing Railgunner because just how much damage you do. It's crazy. You can one-shot teleporter bosses basically through the entire game if you get the right items, but honestly, even if you don't. So either special that you take, the freeze is super good against Mithrix, executes them and stops them from coming after you. And the other one just does so much damage that you don't even need to freeze them because they'll be dead. just an awesome character, and I really enjoy like the hit and run playstyle and the skill expression of having to hit the weak points of those fast moving enemies and in the heat of combat and still focus on your surroundings enough to like dodge everything. The mobility with the mines is also another big point in Railgunner's favor. Who doesn't love mine jumping around the map? It's awesome. So Railgunner at the top of the always fun tier. Rex, bam, straight into fuck you. Okay, he's not as bad as Acrid because at least you have to play Rex dynamically. But anything besides Eclipse 8, he's like okay. If you talk about Eclipse 8 though, the self-damage is just unbearable. And even on Eclipse 5, when healing gets nerfed, he becomes really unsatisfying to play with his health cost abilities. Even though they do heal you, I just always feel like I'm killing myself, especially on Eclipse 8. And there's not really a great way to get it all back. With his alternate like abilities that don't damage you, they're just super underwhelming damage-wise, and they don't provide any healing. And Rex is just, you know, his mobility with his shift, even if you like point it backwards, it's pretty lame. And he just overall feels like a worse multi, like in every way. He just feels like a nerfed multi with Nailgun or something. And then lastly, Void Fiend. Void Fiend is super good, probably one of the best survivors of the game, top 3 maybe. However, this isn't a good tier list, this is a fun tier list, and he's gonna go right beneath the Huntress in the always fun tier. That's because he has like a really interesting divergence in his build pass. You can either go with like a cool corruption healing build where you're always sitting at 25 and you can just spam the heal and just be super hard to kill, and his left click in the uncorrupted form is long range, very consistent, good damage, but really boring. And his right click also just kind of forgettable. So really the main appeal to him is just you have a long range laser beam and you can just spam heal on yourself. It's good, but his shift, like his utility too, it kind of sends you awkwardly high up in the air and you take fall damage. And I think Eclipse 3, like you're just gonna kill yourself with it if you get enough movement speed. So that's pretty scary. That's why he's not like in the peak tier. But the thing that is bringing him up so high is his corrupted form. Man, that's fun. If you get enough crit to sustain yourself in the corrupted form, when you're blasting him with that Kamehameha, ooh, it's so good. It's like right up there with those great moments of double saw multi, but just way more consistent whenever you don't have those moments. And you can basically kind of craft a build to get which side that you want out of him depending on like what items that you get early on. And he just has like a really engaging game loop where you're kind of trying to find that spot where you can like stay alive outside of the corrupted form, but like really get the damage in on the bosses with the corruption. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about Void Fiend though, but he is very like engaging and interesting, and he is just super cool in his corrupted form. Alright, that's my whole tier list, so let me know in the comments, like, what do you guys think? What are the hot takes here that you disagree with? What are your hot takes? And how would you do this tier list differently, basically? Comment your main, and if your main is one of these, I'm sorry, but sucks to suck, I guess. And if your main is one of these, peak tier, respect, okay? Respect. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks everybody for watching, and have a good one. Peace.